Let me
Good
get this
morning. We'd
up
like to
here.
welcome you to a special edition of BlackUSA.News. My name's Doni Glover, and we're being joined this morning by attorney Lisa Hodges. Good morning, Lisa. How are you?
Good morning. I am well on this snowy Baltimore morning.
Praise God. Thank God for another day. We made it.
We made it.
So,
Fantastic.
Lisa, where were you born?
I was born here in Baltimore. I'm a Baltimore girl. I'm a product of all Baltimore City Public Schools, proud City Knight, City
Rose
Forever.
City. We forgive you.
Oh yeah.
Little poly roots.
Yeah, well, nothing wrong with a little healthy rivalry.
You know,
Although we did beat you this year at the football game.
y'all been beating the pants off us off of Polly for a minute. Now I have to let you know I'm a very proud Dunbar poet, but my first 2 years of high school were at Polly, and my son and my daughter both graduated from Polly. But I
Oh,
love City.
fantastic.
I had more of a brain for City, probably liberal arts and
Mm-hmm.
pre-law than I did for being an engineer. I did not want to be an engineer. That's what Polly taught me.
Right. Well,
And why?
mhm. Well, fantastic. So you were a poet. So you went to your roots there.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic.
Um, Is that where you were inspired to be a lawyer?
You know what? I think issues around justice and fairness started even when I was at Yorkwood Elementary School. Just, uh, just being interested in making sure that everybody has a fair shot, that everybody has a great opportunity. And, I was raised by parents who let me know that, when you receive blessings, you need to bless other people. So that really drew me to becoming a lawyer. It also drew me to the work that I do today in Westport with community development work. And, it just drives me every day. It helps me to kind of get up in the morning to know that other people do need my help, and it inspires me.
Now, one last question before we get into today's topic. What part of town did you grow up in?
Oh, see now, I grew up on Belvedere and Perrin Parkway, so close, not too far from Morgan, not quite the east side, although I'm repping the east side. Although I live in the west now, I live in Mount Washington, so I'm a proud Northwester right now, but my roots are in the east side.
Touche. I love
So
East Baltimore. My first memories of East Baltimore.
oh yeah, it was
Park
it was a
and
great it
Randall.
was a great place to grow up. It was really really great.
Different kind of code than here on the west side.
Very different code, but Baltimore nonetheless, very Baltimore.
Very Baltimore. Did you know that black people started in East Baltimore and then migrated westward?
It would make sense. It would make sense because of the kind of history of coming in through the port as we did, settling in the downtown area, which was really bustling, and before we enacted the housing kind of segregation codes, where Baltimore was really at the forefront of that and really started that whole thing where black folks couldn't buy into
White
blocks
neighborhood,
that were majority white, and vice versa. People don't know
vice
that. So it
versa.
was really right. It was really a true segregationist kind of legislative history that we have that we're not proud of, but we need to acknowledge in order to prepare.
So this goes back to the days of Mayor J. Barry Mahul,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
early 1900s. He was known as the father of segregation, and I don't know if you've ever heard. That's the security force. I don't know if
Oh
you've
yeah.
ever heard of George McMecken.
Yes. Oh yes. Of course. For which McMecken Street is named.
George McMecken and
Mhm.
his I'm not I get it mixed up. His cousin, I think, Ashby Hawkins, both
Okay. Mhm.
attorneys. They
Right.
stayed on J. Barry Mahul like white on rice,
Right.
pun intended.
Right. Right.
But
I
they
mean,
made him, they stayed on him to press him to do the right thing.
yeah. This.
I'll give you another interesting piece of history of Baltimore. We had
Mm,
the largest population of free blacks prior to the Civil War.
wow.
So that left this Negro dilemma for white
Mm.
people what to do with all of these Negroes.
With all of these Negroes. Well, I think, Baltimore, we've done a lot to kind of secure our political voice in Baltimore as Black folks. Obviously, we're the home of the Afro newspaper, so we've been at the forefront of journalism and kind of critiquing that same political structure. So, I think we've got such a rich history in Baltimore. I hope that as we move forward, that we honor that history by making sure that, all of those folks who really fought hard for what we have, really that we honor that, that we really kind of reach a level of equity that I don't think we see today.
I want to let you know that this show is being broadcast both, well, actually on Facebook, also on YouTube, but thirdly, and most recently, on Dr. Tyrone Taborn's metaverse called
Oh,
STEM
wow.
City USA. Metaverse is the next step in the internet. It includes the Oculus goggles and the virtual reality, aka VR.
It's a lot. It's a whole lot. It reminds me of the Gil Scott Heron song because there's so much technology going on and yet so much that's needed in our community at a very basic level.
You mentioned Rich, and we're segueing.
Mm.
Uh, Next door to Westport is Cherry Hill. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
was introduced to a term that I did not know. Have you ever heard people in Cherry Hill say that they're rich,
No.
raised in Cherry Hill?
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll have to take that back to my good friend Mike Middleton, who is the executive director of the Cherry Hill Community Development Corporation, a friend and colleague, and let him know he hasn't hit me to all the lingo.
He hasn't. How is Mike?
He's doing well. He's doing well. I think there are a lot of good things on the horizon, especially for Cherry Hill. One of the things in Westport that we kind of, we applaud them, but we also are a little, low key salty about is that, a lot of focus is put on Cherry Hill, but we don't feel like in Westport, Lakeland, Mount Winans, and St. Paul, which are, we're on the other side of the Middle Branch where they're neighbors, we don't get a lot of focus. So, I love them, and I want to highlight some things that are going on in our neighborhoods next door.
Mhm. So tell us about what's going on in Westport.
Westport, I started working in Westport in like 2018, right as as our neighbors were trying to negotiate this community benefits agreement with, then it was Sagamore Development who was developing Port Covington and kind of through this whole process. And there's a lot of need in Westport. We have a collaborative agreement with our neighbors, Westport, Mount Winans, Lakeland, and St. Paul under the Harbor West Collaborative umbrella. We're trying to work together on some collective impact projects. And it's rich ground for opportunity because currently we have no senior center, we have no library, we have no um, grocery store. We have a few corner stores, no real grocery store. We have no job training center. The closest training center is on Bush Street, and we love our friends at the Mayor's Office of Employment Development for what they've been able to do and connect with us remotely. However, in our Harbor West collaborative neighborhoods, the transit and the connectivity is just not there either. So getting to some of these, even the Bush Street Office of Employment Development is a heavy lift for them. We have over 350 units of public housing at the Westport Homes. We have a majority African American population. However, we have a growing, working class white population and Latinx population. So we've got some things we need to balance when we talk about, our residents and balancing culture, trying to get economic opportunity, trying to get them connected to services. We are very fortunate to have a Boys and Girls Club there. Um, We also have we've got a fair amount of green space. We've got Florence Cummings Park, which is I think one of the only parks in Baltimore City that's named for a woman, um, and was donated by Florence Cummings' husband, back in the early 1900s. Um, and we are in two, but I talked about the Port Covington Community Benefits Agreement. We're in that community benefits regime under the SB7 leadership, but we're also in the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership uh, catchment area. So we are eligible to receive grant funds through the Casino Impact um, state funding. So there is access to opportunity, but currently just not a lot of services, food access on the ground. We've been doing food delivery and distribution since March 2020 for all of the neighborhoods.
So take me back to when Port Covington, Sagamore, they were meeting with Mike and the other
Mhm.
community leaders. What did they get?
Hmm. So what the community got was an opportunity to be a partner, kind of almost like a profit sharing partner, right? So the initial, uh, we got an initial tranche of funds, $9 million. Before that, we got, I want to say it was like $1 million, then 9 million, so a total of 10. The million was upfront for grants, and there's always been um, a process to go through. It wasn't like a check was just written to community associations. And the only folks who were eligible to receive that initial tranche, I believe, or you had to go through um, a um, a neighborhood association who was a signer on that agreement. So just for the benefit of folks listening, there were six neighborhoods, original neighborhoods that are the signers of those of that community benefits agreement. So that's Westport, Lakeland, Mount Winans, Cherry Hill, Brooklyn, and Curtis Bay. So those are the neighborhoods who benefit from this agreement. So there was that initial tranche of money, 1 million upfront, 9 million that we just received when they closed on the TIF bonds. The way our deal was structured was in the neighborhood of leadership trying to be fair to the developer, wanted to not, ask for the money up front. We wanted to be a part of the ongoing success of the project, and that was really the deal that the community wanted to make. So, upon execution, a sale of the TIF bonds, closing on the TIF bonds, we got the $9 million, and here on out, there's a percentage that goes to the SB7 organization, which is comprised of the six neighborhoods and Weller Development representatives. So it's a joint, organization. It's a 501(c)(3), and the revenue stream here on out comes from sales and leases in the Port Covington footprint.
Okay, so my question is, did Westport get what they were promised?
Huh. So at this point, even though it's been a long time coming, I think the main kind of challenge has been when we started the negotiation back in before 2016. I think the agreement was signed in 2016. The expectation was that the money was going to be flowing a lot faster. So that has been a challenge. We're now at the point where we do have that, $9 million. And I will say there's a larger community benefits agreement with the city, which requires an independent auditor that the project will pay for, that I think resides at the comptroller's office to make sure that all of the things that are promised in the community benefits um, agreements are delivered. At this point, there are some questions about how the transfers are being done and how the sales are being done. There was a recent sale, I believe, in the Port Covington footprint where we were told it doesn't really qualify as a sale. because one of the original owners is still part of the ownership group. And from my all right, and so from my work in DC, this is a technique that's commonly used by landlords to get out, or was commonly used by landlords to get out of the tenant opportunity purchase law, where in DC you had to offer right of first refusal if you were a property owner, landlord selling your rental property. You had to offer the tenants the first right to buy it, and there were certain time limits and things that they had to do under that. But one of the workarounds was that um, those property owners would do a reorganization, and maybe the former owner would retain 1% or something like that. Now I don't know the full breakdown of what the current ownership is on that transfer, but I think there's some challenges. There are going to be some challenges in making sure that all of the lease ups and all of the sales will really count towards the revenue going to SB7. Um, and so I think the other piece is, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think the other piece is, the SB7 organization, as I said, includes, Weller Development and some representatives. um, we need to grow as an organization to make sure that we are working in a true partnership, and making sure that some of the things that are in the letter of the agreement, that we kind of we refine that. And I'll give you an example. Uh, I think under the citywide community benefits agreement, the developer is supposed to provide, I think, like $25 million in workforce development assistance. There's local hiring requirements, and all of that. And there is a specific employee at the mayor's office of employment development who it works with Port Covington on local hires, right? So that sounds great. However, I like to say you can't manage what you don't measure. And the way the data is being collected on employees, we don't have the granular neighborhood level data. So we don't know at this point, when we look at the Port Covington hiring numbers, whether or not the 6 neighborhoods in the benefits area, if any of our residents are being employed, right? So we'd have to go back and look at, the zip codes and the addresses, and that is not, unfortunately, part of the community benefits agreement to get data at that granular level.
So that's
So
necessary. That needs
it
to
is
be
necessary.
implemented
Yeah,
now so we can measure.
right.
Right now, you're
Yeah.
saying there's no baseline.
There's no baseline. And, so unless we have anecdotal, evidence from folks that we just know in the neighborhood who have gotten jobs, which we don't unfortunately have that, because I've not interacted with anybody who's been hired over there. Um, we just don't have the data, so we wanna work towards getting better data, to get them to keep better data, so that we know, of the however many hires they've done so far, how many are coming from each neighborhood.
So is there, let me do what we can at least here. Is there a website you want people to go to connect with you, to give you
Sure.
updated information, etc.?
Sure. Our website is www.westportcedc, for Community Economic Development Corporation, .org.
WestportCDC.org,
CEDC, right,
WestportEDC.org.
right. Westport, CEDC.org. I know we're special.
So that's a community.
Economic Development Corporation. So the
And
history,
what's the difference
yeah.
between that and the CDC?
So the history of this organization is, you will remember, the name from the past, Pat Turner. He, when he was doing, owned the 43 parcel or 43 acre waterfront site in Westport and was going to bring this massive development right before the housing crash. Um, I think one of the things that everybody realized was that there needed to be more capacity on the ground to interact with neighbors in Westport and in the surrounding communities. So there was a movement to form this organization, and they wanted to focus not only on housing, but also on commercial development. There is a wonderful stretch of Annapolis Road in Westport that used to be a bustling hub for commercial you know, outlets. So there was a bank there. We used to have car glass factory. We also have, had some residential, and it was really bustling. Today, it is riddled with vacants. We have just so many vacant units there. It's riddled. Annapolis Road is not the gateway into Baltimore City that it could be. Uh, it is. We are, a stone's throw from the casino. However, that stretch of Annapolis Road in Westport doesn't even have a yellow line down the middle to delineate, the different traffic flow, and so, you know, the area is very has remnants of commercial, has remnants of its old, former heyday, and I think the vision was, and the vision still is, to bring that back and to really recreate Annapolis Road into something more akin to 36th Street in Hamden, or for those who like my heart as a I'm a Baltimore girl, but the heart of a New Orleanian in New Orleans Street. We've got Lower Magazine Street, which is a bustling commercial area. So that's really the vision that we have for Annapolis Road. So therein comes the economic piece of the Economic Development Corporation.
Can you take me back? Were you there when I remember Alicia Wilson
Hmm.
connecting with Mike and the other community leaders? We interviewed them a couple of times. Were you there early on? How long have you been there in terms of the
So
Westport CEDC?
yeah, so I started out uh, advising the community groups before becoming a paid either consultant to Westport and then executive director. So I've been with them for quite some time. Initially, I was there as a thought partner from Enterprise Community Partners. I had a consultancy with them, and they generously donated some of the time that I consulted with for them to this group to help them really balance and think through what are the things that what do you really want to get out of this deal, and what's the best way to get the developer to agree to a long-term relationship that's mutually beneficial.
And the developer is Sagamore.
So they were right at the time, Sagamore, then Weller Development, and now there is
Weller, that's
a
Mark Weller. That's
oh yeah.
he's what, a partner to Plank.
So it's my understanding that their relationship is business and they've known each other for a long time. And I believe, Weller Development did some of the initial, kind of legwork on the acquisitions for Port Covington.
Does it
And
look
now
like
is the developer, and now is the developer, sorry, of record for Port Covington. So while the ownership is majority Goldman Sachs, and there is an LLC called, was it Baltimore Urban Revitalization Corporation, uh, Weller Development is still boots on the ground when it comes to executing on the development.
I've been wanting to ask this for the longest time. When that deal was being made, there was a lot of talk in the newspaper about city council people all getting checks from Sagamore that influenced their decision on the TIF.
I don't know anything about that. What I will say is it was a really lengthy process. I think, we had community partners that really advocated strongly, like Build. Um,
And big ups, God rest his soul, to Bishop Doug Miles.
right, right. I mean, so I think everybody was very at the time when we were going through the public process for the TIF on that deal, people in Baltimore had kind of had enough with the TIFs, so they really wanted more transparency. I know that Councilmember Stokes was, very integral in making sure that hearings happened, and um, I'll say that there's some things that are challenging with the TIF process in Baltimore City, right? So historically, the tax increment finance district, or the area that is defined um, for how the real estate taxes are captured, and how the revenue that's captured can be spent. Typically, for listeners, you establish a TIF district, a tax increment finance district. You do take a benchmark of where the taxes are at time one, and then anything above that goes into a fund to pay back, usually bonds that are issued, uh, you know, to get the projected revenue up front. So the benefit is that you can do, and it's usually for infrastructure improvements and capital improvements on a project. You get that money up front rather than having to wait in the out years when revenue would actually come in. So in Baltimore, historically, they have not done projects where it's a community benefit, so that the revenue coming in goes beyond the project. You can spend it on infrastructure outside of the footprint of the project. And so this still doesn't do that. This TIF doesn't. But I think the community benefits agreement that was negotiated here goes beyond anything that we've seen historically in Baltimore. Does it go
Really,
far
really.
enough? Yeah, I mean, no, I don't know of any other group that has gotten $10 million up front from the developer in a community benefits agreement, or that has, revenue coming in the out years, in theory, based on sales and lease up on the property.
So Alicia Wilson did a really good thing then.
You know what? I think Alicia Wilson is to be commended because she had a really hard job. She,
She was catching it from all
followed,
angles. They were
yeah,
busting caps in her from all angles.
I mean, I think she followed
They
her
didn't
own
care that
moral
she had a
compass.
pretty smile. I'm sorry.
She follows her own moral compass, and I think when you do that, you get a great result, right? So she was able to get a result where, the developer, wasn't crushed, right? We weren't trying to crush it, because we all understood that if the project didn't go forward, we weren't getting anything, right? So you've got to balance that, but then also making sure to push her employer
You got to make,
to
you
build
got to
that.
make a profit.
Right, right. You got to make a profit. But I think she pushed, Sagamore from the inside to make sure that there was fairness and equity. And so I think now the challenge is to take that and make sure that we execute on that agreement in a way that really benefits the community. And I mean, the potential is really there. The potential is there.
And that's the purpose of the Westport Community
Mhm.
Economic Development Corporation.
Right. So that's just one of our jobs, right? So we've got that going on. We have a wholly owned subsidiary, which is a community land trust, which is the Harbor West uh, Collaborative Affordable Housing Land Trust. And the goal of that subsidiary is to um, maintain permanent affordability, acquire homes, rehab homes in our catchment area, and maintain permanent affordability. We currently have four properties. We want to keep those at around between the 30 and 50% area median income affordability level. Once we kind of get our first tranche done, we want to, kind of broaden that range because we know that a mixed income community is what we need to attract quality retail to the area. And that is another one of our goals, is to address healthy food access and the food insecurity in our neighborhoods, as well as attract quality retail.
Now, were you doing this kind of work prior?
Yes, my first foray into this kind of work was at the Madison Avenue Development Corporation. Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church is my church home, and that was in, I hate to say how long ago it was, but that was in the early uh, late 90s, early 2000s.
Where's Madison Presbyterian?
Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church is located at 2110 Madison Avenue at the corner of just a block off of North Avenue, North of
You're a
Madison.
North Avenue girl.
Well, that's where I worship. I'll say that. Yes, yes, indeed. And so when you look at the corner of Utah and North Avenue, the Madison Avenue Outreach Center was my first development project where I was the prime developer. So the Madison Avenue Development Corporation developed that building with a lot of help from the city. Dan Henson was the housing commissioner at the time.
But it's not, is it serving the same purpose today?
We don't have all the same vendors there. We used to have a daycare center that I believe is not active, but I believe we have the Druid Heights
Okay.
family, right, partnership there, as well as, I think, yeah. So,
You got your
right.
own security force too.
I know, yes, I've got a 100-pound black lab. Sorry about the background noise. Yes, our protection system. I know.
I have to shift gears for a minute because the dogs, yours and mine, have me mindful of this new phenomena in Baltimore. Here in Sandtown, we are inundated. This is a 98% African American community. But in any hour of the day, I can look into my alley and see addicts who certainly don't come from Sandtown, Druid Heights, Upton.
Right.
I see them in my alley. I see them breaking into vacants.
Yeah.
They're eating up my man hours of having to call the Department of Housing to come board up one of their own properties.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that there in Westport?
Yes, we are. I mean, so we talked about conditions on the ground, and I talked at a high level about what the services are that we have or don't have. One of the primary barriers for us in attracting capital to our area and attracting investment, quality investment, are a couple of what I call super predator speculators. They have come into Westport. They have bought properties. There's one company called HC Baltimore LLC, and they own, I think, over 30 properties, all vacant. They haven't pulled permits. There's nothing going on to show any kind of intentionality on investing in these. And what happens when you have that concentration of vacants is that you attract folks like that. We have an open and notorious drug market at the corner of Sydney and Kent Street, right by our little light rail station. We have folks that we see come in on the light rail, visit that corner, engage in some kind of transaction, and then get back on the light rail and go home. That's what we used to see. Now what we're seeing is they're staying. We're seeing folks who are, in these vacants at night. I don't know how they're tapping into the electrical infrastructure over there.
Got electricity, running water.
Right, they've got it all. We've got a few units where neighbors have called in called us and complained. We've communicated that with Councilmember Porter's office. We've communicated that with the
With
police.
who?
Councilmember Porter, she's our council member,
Oh,
Felicia
Felicia
Porter.
Porter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Has she done anything about it, or has she been
Oh
on top
yes,
of it?
you know what? I have to say her office has been responsive. Um,
But see, she really has nothing to do with it. She,
sh-
you know, the process, and the average
right.
person doesn't. But we would presume. I mean, because I dealt with it here, I would,
Mm-hmm,
presumably initially, I went to the council person.
mm-hmm.
But what you really have to do is find out who's responsible for that property, get their email address, and send them,
So, you know, so the
send them one of them blind CC emails where you copy everybody from Barack Obama to the dope man.
and you know what? And we have done that. I think where Councilmember Porter's office is very instrumental is in helping us follow the trail of folks who need to kind of bird dog it. So at Housing
And,
Community
and,
Development.
and what do you find as you follow that trail?
So one of the properties, is, I said a couple of properties actually are owned by this super predator, speculator, and we do have a connect with his realtor. This guy lives in Virginia, but he owns property, all these, properties in Baltimore, and the realtor promises us that they're going to go out there, they're going to look at it, or they try to deny that it's going on. We are also working with Department of Housing Community Development to have these properties foreclosed on through the receivership process,
Which
and
takes 2
so
years.
that's what they say. That's what they say. One of the things that we did, we had a community walk with Commissioner Kennedy, who was interim commissioner at the time, and her senior staff, her senior code enforcement staff. And it was really, I highly encourage all community leaders to do that. They're not going to like that I say that, but um, you could see the difference in their understanding of the issue once we had to walk those blocks
So
and they
I'm
saw.
presuming, I'm getting the sense that we have people in office, in position, who are responsible for a particular area that they very well may have never visited.
Correct. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
There's a
And
famous
that's not, and
photographer in
I'm not.
Baltimore named J.D. Howard, and he said, "You
Mhm,
can't teach what
right.
you don't know. You can't rule where you don't go." And I have to second the motion about calling these city people, emailing them, engaging with them to bring them to your community, because what I'm finding is we have a lot of younger people,
Mhm.
35, and they just don't know.
They don't know, they don't understand the nexus between the vacants and investment. And when you're standing in the middle, when like, so for example, right there at the light rail stop in Westport should be a clarion call for transit-oriented development. It should be like a magnet for that. It's not, because we've got that open and notorious drug market right there. And it doesn't stop. It is like, 24/7. You don't get the full effect of it unless you're there, unless you see it, you see what's going on, and then you also see how many vacants are around that. That 2200 block of Sydney Avenue is I would say
Thank
80% vacant. 80% of those units are vacant. So that gives them a great opportunity to do business. And I will say we recently had a report from a neighbor, like 30 minutes after I left that area, that there was a shooting. They saw police cars. They saw an ambulance leave the scene. And then we later saw I think on the Facebook page, BPD Facebook page, that there was an arrest of, an individual or individuals, guns, drugs, a gun, some drugs recovered. Um, oh, I think you're muted.
I'm hearing on the streets the police are getting beat up in Westport.
Well, so that's what a neighbor reported. Now, when I called the Southern District to get any information, they were not forthcoming with any
I
information
wouldn't tell
about the
nobody I
incident.
got beat up.
I will say, and I feel comfortable saying this because Major Conway has since retired, so I don't think this causes him any professional harm. But and he said in Major Conaway, who was a former major from Southern District, as I said, retired, in a public safety meeting, said to us when we said, can you move them along? Can you get your officers to get out of the car and move some of these folks along? Um, he said, he didn't have confidence that some of the younger officers had the training necessary to be able to get out of their car, engage with these folks on the corner boys, without it escalating to a situation over which they had no control. And my response to him was, so you're telling me that, someone like me, no police training, no military training, just the passion for my residents, I'm on my own. And that's how prior to at least seeing that there was an arrest here, that's how we felt. We're like on our own. And
And
we have to engage. Huh?
don't forget the consent decree. And
Yeah.
I'm not pointing fingers at the cops, but since the consent decree, they're not as zealous, they're not as quick.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hoping is that this recent arrest shows a shift because, like I said, at the last public safety meeting that I went to, I think it was in November, Major Conaway's response was, basically, when we asked for help. So I'm
Is that
hoping
what
that
the
this shows
consent
a
decree
shift.
is supposed to do, though?
It's not,
I mean,
we need,
because all
yeah.
of this focus on the history, and I get it.
Hmm.
Baltimore cops have been mean to black people. I get it. But pulling back the reins now leaves you with the 2200 block of Sydney, leaves me with Pennsylvania and
Yeah.
Lawrence, where there's a weekly shooting. There are people shooting
Hmm.
dope in
Yeah.
public,
Yeah.
let alone the dope sales. I mean, people are literally shooting dope in public alongside the Avenue Market.
I hope that we don't have to go there in Westport to get to where we need. I think
And
we
is
need.
it because these are black neighborhoods? Because
Yes.
we over here in Sandtown, 4 blocks away is Bolton Hill. Now I got
Yeah,
white
right.
addicts in my alley. I got white addicts in my alley in this 98% black community. But
Right.
I don't see black addicts in Bolton Hill alleys.
And you won't. And you won't.
What?
Because I do think that from what I've seen as being a resident, there is a difference in approach to policing in different neighborhoods. There are certain things that are just not tolerated.
I see
And
them put the cuffs
but
on
but
white
also part.
boys. They put the cuffs on white boys in my neighborhood, take their dope, and then take the cuffs off of them and let them go. I've
Let them
seen
go.
it with my own eyes.
Mhm.
It's
It's
nothing nobody
terrible.
told me.
But you know what? The other thing, I'm going to go back to that concentration of vacant houses issue. When you have when you only have one or two occupied units in a block, you don't have the eyes on the street. You don't have the, kind of, you can be, there's fear of reprisal. My residents fear reprisal from the corner boys if they report things. I have residents who are cowering and who don't want, I mean, they'll ask me to call. They'll ask me and my workers to call. I've got my green ambassador workers out there doing plantings and cleaning. I'm afraid for them now. I'm afraid to have them go on that block to clean, which definitely needs it, um, because we fear reprisal.
I have to
We
come out
can't.
there and see you. I have to come out there and see you. But
Yes,
I'm going to share with you that the solution I found was to talk to the dope man.
and I have to say that when we
Because
first started
clearly
doing,
you can't count on the police to protect you from them. So you might as well
you,
build your own rapport. And if someone
you,
else listening has a better solution, I'm all ears.
I know. You do have to
And
engage.
then, by the way, get them to contribute to your annual festival.
So, we don't want to get into a source of funds issue. As somebody recently did get into. What we have had some cooperation with them on is cleaning up, keeping their areas clean, and moving them off of the steps of occupied homes. And so I will say that we have had they have heeded our request to do that. They have kept their corner area clean. And I also think that with this economy, we see more of a concentration of folks on the corner. So a business can only support so many employees, right? I think the economy has forced some people to try to look into that informal revenue means of getting revenue, and I don't know if that's sustainable for them. So
Of
I
course
think
not.
one of the things that we want to hopefully do is try to attract some of those folks who might be trying to get a job on the corner to other employment. And so that's where that other economic development piece of our organization comes in with job training, with trying to, really push our development partners at Port Covington to, partner with us to make sure we get folks trained, that they get jobs. We want to help them with eliminating those barriers to employment. You would be surprised, Donnie, you would be surprised. Folks who don't have ID, they really they don't, and they don't know how to get it. And they
Because you
and
need ID to get ID.
you need ID to get ID. They don't have birth certificates. We tried to hire a gentleman who had been working with us as a volunteer. We give a stipend because we think it's obscene to ask poor people to volunteer. So we did give a stipend with our food distribution, but we tried to hire him as a permanent hire, and he could not give us the I-9 documentation, so we couldn't hire him. Um, these things are real. It's
I
funding.
have a team. Maybe I can connect you with the Men's and Family Center in East Baltimore.
We're
Mr.
on
Levi
it. We are on it. My
going to
community organizer, Kelly Carrington, is on that. She's made that connection. We're going to have some, pop-ups coming up where we can get some help getting that ID. It is so very critical. Getting
we
it
need
funded.
you. We need your expertise here in Sandtown.
And listen, we are happy to share the knowledge, share the connections, share the strategy.
We need a Sandtown Winchester CEDC.
I support that. I totally
Right on,
support
sister. What do you? We have about 8 minutes. What
it.
do we really want to bang home to our listeners?
You know, I think one of the things is that, support your local community development corporation. If you don't have one, meet with your neighbors. There are some resources to help you form a CDC. The Community Law Center is one of those. The Maryland Association of Nonprofit is one of those. That's really the only way that we can, kind of get what we deserve from our government partners. Also invite, the housing commissioner and her staff on a neighborhood walk so that they can really see what's going on the ground. And I think the other piece is, I used to work, back in one of my former professional lives for the Baltimore Development Corporation. I want to know where they are in our neighborhoods. We
They're not.
need
They're downtown.
Yeah, we really need investment. We really need some creative solutions to the lack of healthy food access. That issue for us is so very critical. And you cannot attract a decent grocery store without one, like in our area, we need to find the space. We need to have a parcel large enough to attract a grocery store, you know, to our area. But the other thing is we need some incentives. We need some to be able to offer them, a few years free rent, just like Mr. Padarak has
Panoramic.
offered to Whole Foods in Fells Point. We need to be able to offer them some other kind of job training, assistance. We need some. Oh, and I see the comment from my friend and colleague Richard. I mean, sorry, William Honablu, with the grinding gang, to help nonprofits. Yeah, there are resources out there that we need to access, but we also need to speak with a collective voice about the need for investment. Every time we ask for these kind of things, like, can we get some incentives for grocery stores, and people act like it's the riddle of the sphinx. It is not. There are models in
I don't
for-profit development.
understand this.
Hmm.
The problem I have, you got a black mayor, a black council president, a black comptroller.
Right.
Why isn't this automatic? Why isn't Baltimore more like Atlanta, where you expect black people to be taken care of because black people are downtown making the decisions?
So I'll boil it down to something that somebody told me about
What's the point of
a
having
little
black
while
people?
ago.
You might as well have white people if it's going to be like that. I'm just
It
saying.
Somebody told me that in order for us to have the political kind of clout, we need to get the votes. We need to
Come on,
show.
come on. We've been playing that game for a
Well,
long
I
time.
mean, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Because we can't get votes if we don't have the residents. We can't get the residents if we have all this concentration of vacant housing. So it's one of those things. And the other thing is we don't donate.
That's another excuse.
It is an excuse. It is another excuse because we shouldn't have to count votes. We shouldn't have to count donations in order to get city services. But the reality is, when you look at where the services are being delivered, that's you've got
This
voters
is
and you've
my
got
$2 billion question for you.
hmm
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Baltimore got more nonprofits than Dones got pills. Why there's murders every damn way? Why is there a 13-year-old getting killed in front of a rec center, a 69-year-old woman getting killed in church, and a police lady getting shot in her car? If we got so much damn money and so many nonprofits, where's the money going? Because it ain't solving stuff.
So we can have nonprofits that don't necessarily have the money. So one of the things that I know folks are working on is getting the grant money that is sitting over at DHCD out the door. The city has to do a better job in deploying its funds directly to
Well, we got
nonprofits.
people down in City Hall making over $100,000. Don't they know that that's a part of their job? I'm confused.
There's some people who think part of their job is to be a bureaucrat
For
and
what?
not really to get the money. I don't know, because I'll say in my professional life, one of the things that I think
Damn
good
America.
government does is get money out the door, is really get that investment hitting the streets, getting people the assistance they need. I think one thing, the technical assistance piece, it would be great if we could get money to some of these organizations that deliver technical assistance to amplify their ability to help nonprofits really operate.
Okay, how can people get in touch with you, Miss? Was there anything else you wanted to add? I'm sorry, we're just trying to get off. I know Mr. Blue is coming on
I
immediately
know,
following
right?
us, and I try to stay out of his way. Plus, he's a lawyer too.
Yeah, you know what? He's great. I think we just want to make sure that folks hold government accountable. We want the government to be held accountable. We want the police to be held accountable, and we don't want y'all to forget about us. We're on the precipice of a multi-billion-dollar investment on the Westport waterfront. There's been a new buyer. It's not new anymore. Ray Jackson of Stonewall Capital bought the 43-acre site. They've gone through a subdivision that's been passed. They're now poised to have the planned unit development, which is the zoning regime, repealed on that site, so that there can be a lower density development than was imagined by Pat Turner. I will say that I was a little skeptical when he first bought the property, because he typically has done suburban development. However, He has worked with us every step of the way, been transparent. We worked together to stop the maglev train coming through Westport, at least pausing it for the moment. And he is trying to work with the city to give to the city 11 acres of parkland, dedicated parkland on that site. We need a little bit more cooperation from Mr. Moore, Director Moore at Recreation and Parks, in order to get that done. But this developer, I think, is trying to do the right thing with us. But again, along the same experience with Port Covington, we've got to be very ever vigilant on that. So looking forward to keeping you apprised, keeping everybody apprised of our progress there. I can be reached via email, Lisa@westportcedc.org, and happy to answer any more questions. And I really have to say, Donnie, that I was inspired to reach out to you because of the things that you were saying about Sandtown Winchester. We are experiencing the same things. We're experiencing those the drug users coming into the neighborhood. We're experiencing the lack of investment. We need more capacity on the ground so that some of this community development doesn't fall on just a few key players. And we also need for these nonprofit organizations to get money directly, not have intermediaries, not have, I think we've seen recently where there's an intermediary that had too much money going in and couldn't really handle all of that. So we need to build that capacity on the ground with these nonprofits. And so I salute you for your work. And I want to just kind of send you strength and endurance and kind of healing energy for you to do the stuff you do in Sandtown Winchester.
Good deal. Lisa Hodges. Stay tuned for BlackUSA.News morning show. Good morning, world.